Welcome back to the Fiasco Sports NBA season previews. I'm Matt Sampson. Joining me today is Mark Halliday. Going to be talking some Dallas Mavericks, but before we get into it, just want to say a quick shout out to Sporties at the Arkabar for letting us film here today. NFL season kicks off today and they've been nice enough to let us in on opening day before the games get started. So check them out. Link to their Facebook will be in the description. But yeah, the Dallas Mavericks, I've got them ranked 7th and 5th overall in the West. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
I think that's a pretty accurate call. Definitely not top 4 team in the West. We'll finish probably about 5th to 8th. Mm-hmm. About the same where they were last year, despite the improvements on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, they were one of the biggest movers in the off-season, weren't they, sort of with so much turnover, but I really wanted to fit them into the top 4, but I kept looking at the Grizzlies and the Thunder and all those teams, and I just couldn't bump them up that next spot. Just looking at what they did last season, they went 49-33, which put them 8th seed. So technically we have bumped them up a little bit this season, but last year they were top 10 offense, bottom 3rd of the league in defense, which was sort of the story of their year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's going back to the old days of Nelly Ball where there's a lot of offense, not a lot of defense, but they have brought in a few defensive players this year. Tyson Chandler comes back.
Alpha Ikamunu's coming across, hopefully going to be a defensive stopper on the wing in some spot minutes. But looking at what they were really good at last season was probably a bit of the obvious, but vintage Dirk. We had a healthy Dirk Nowitzki come back, and he was just on fire last season, wasn't he?
I think Dirk Nowitzki's taken a sip from the Tim Duncan pool of aging. He's getting better as he gets older. He's still got that beautiful turnaround jump shot from the post. He's still got a great offensive game. Complementing with Tyson Chandler, I think that'll be really good. A 1-2 punch at the front court.
Yeah, well, bringing Chandler back is really, that's what helped them win that championship. Was Dirk's not the best defensive player going around, so to have someone that can protect the rim behind him is really helpful. And Samuel Dellenberg never really was quite Tyson Chandler 2.0, was he?
Not really. You couldn't really rely on him to play a lot of minutes to start with and not get a lot of stops, so Tyson Chandler's definitely an upgrade.
Yeah, and we've noted down there that the defensive struggles really were their biggest weakness. And I mean, guys like Vince Carter, Jose Calderon, Samuel Dellenberg, Dirk Nowitzki, Monte Ellis even, like, he gets a lot of steals, but he's jumping a lot of passing lanes. They don't really strike fear into opposing offensive players, do they?
Not really, no. Vince Carter, as good as he is, he's not a great defensive player. Same with Monte Ellis. They're just sort of a bit like a sieve, really, just letting people through.
Yeah, sort of those opportunistic defenders that'll jump a passing lane and get a couple steals a game, and the stats will make it maybe see like they're playing a lot of defense, but they're really not.
They'll make a highlight play every now and again to make it look good.
Yeah, that's it. But looking at what they've done in the off-season, they've been one of the teams that have had the most turnover, haven't they? It's sort of been overshadowed by the Kevin Love trade because, you know, obviously he's the biggest name moving.
Takes all the focus away. Yeah,
this happened before the draft. And they brought Tyson Chandler back, but also they sent out Jose Calderon and brought in, I know one of your favourite players, Raymond Felton.
Raymond Felton, I don't know how many games Raymond Felton's going to play this year. He's already suspended 4 games at the start of the season for gun offences. Is he going to make it to 50 games?
Well, we were talking before we started recording. It probably doesn't matter because Dallas is sort of stockpiling has-been point guards, haven't they?
Yeah, they've got Devin Harris, who...
One-time All-Star.
One-time All-Star, okay, that's important.
Yep.
They've got Jameer Nelson.
One-time All-Star.
They acquired from Orlando Magic.
Yeah, maybe they're sort of hoping maybe they can put all these B-grade point guards together and sort of blend them into an A- point guard. Is that maybe the theory they're going with?
I don't know. Maybe if like 3 of them play 48 minutes, then that's the equivalent of someone. I don't know what they're trying there.
Yeah, I mean, they've also brought in another big name was Chandler Parsons. So, you know, they missed out on Dwight Howard. They missed out on Deron Williams. So they've splashed the cash and they've brought in Chandler Parsons, which, you know, what's your thoughts on that move? Because he's had a couple good seasons, but he's not an all-star caliber player just yet.
Definitely not an all-star caliber player, but massive improvement for that team at the 3 spot. He's going to bring in a lot of scoring, probably a better defensive player than Vince Carter, who would have played at that spot as well. Better offensive player than Sean Marion, who they also lost during the off-season, and works well in that front court. You've got a really quick front court with Harris and Ellis and Parsons, so they could look to get out and run. Yeah,
I think that's one thing that he's definitely good at is he's an excellent spot-up shooter on that Rockets team we saw, but he's also a really good transition finisher. So that up the court Nelly ball that we're sort of talking at, Rick Carlisle Nelly ball, will hopefully, this will really fit Chandler's his game style. But also the fact that he's got that massive contract probably doesn't matter so much because Dirk took such a pay cut in the off season. Don't you think?
Dirk took that pay cut to get big names to this team, and while Chandler Parsons isn't the biggest name in the world, it's still a fairly big acquisition for them.
Yeah, I think it fills out a team that had some weaknesses in that 3 position, because Vince Carter, while he was excellent last year, and Sean Marion, championship player with Dallas, they didn't really want to see him go. They're both on that decline, and hopefully they can catch Parsons going up.
He's coming into the prime of his career, really. He's been in the league for 3 years now, I think.
Yep, about that, yeah.
Yeah, so he should be developing into quite a good player all round.
One guy that I'm also really interested to see Dallas play with, probably not the biggest name, but to add a little bit of crazy to that front court with Tyson Chandler, is Ivan Johnson, who is one of the only players I can recall that has got a tech foul for swearing at an umpire in a summer league game. So, if we can see some crazy Ivan Johnson, that'll be a big bonus for me as well.
Why not? It brings some more headlines to Dallas.
So looking at the 5 guys that'll probably play the bulk of the minutes for the Mavs this season, we've touched on all of them already because it's probably one of the most obvious starting 5 lineups when you look around the league. These guys pretty much have played themselves into this starting 5. And, Devin Harris is one guy that I actually really want to talk about because he has moved from an all-star caliber point guard in New Jersey to being that defensive stopper for the Mavs, hasn't he?
Yeah, and that's going to help that team a lot to elevate their defensive game from last season because, as we said, they weren't the greatest in the world. He's going to have to guard guys like Steph Curry and Derrick Rose and all those guys, so he's going to have to really step up his defensive game. Yeah,
and he's not going to have to worry about the offensive side of the court as much as he did back in those days because this team has so many excellent offensive players around them. I mean, Monte Ellis, he's an excellent slasher and finisher. Dirk, everyone knows what Dirk can do.
Yep.
And we just touched on Chandler Parsons, but Tyson Chandler, the backbone of this defence as well, is a massive upgrade too.
Yeah, it's a huge upgrade over Dallenberg, as we said before. He's going to
shore up that backline like he did hopefully in the championship days. He's that guy that if Dirk gets beaten, then he can probably protect the rim. He had a down season a little bit last year with New York, but then again, who didn't have a down season, especially in the defensive end for the Knicks?
I think everyone had a down season in New York, even the fans and everything like that. So,
yeah, but the one guy that I think is going to be the biggest decider of whether Dallas can push into that top 4 or not is going to be Chandler Parsons, because they've committed such a large amount of salary to him. 3 years, $46 million. It's nothing to sneeze at. Like, that's sort of money that should be going to Dirk, but Dirk's handballed off to get a big name, and they've committed to Parsons, and hopefully he can add something to this side. I mean, last season he was really good, wasn't he?
He was really good. He averaged 16.6 points a game. He increased that to 19.3 in the in the playoffs.
Okay.
So that money's probably going to go a long way for him.
Yeah, and it is only a 3-year deal as well. So we're seeing with the new CBA that teams aren't locking in 7-year, $120 million Rashard Lewis contracts anymore.
That's ridiculous.
So, it's a lot of salary to commit to a guy who's, I'd say, still unproven. At least as a big money signing, because he's never made over $1 million a year before.
No, I wonder what he's going to do with all that money.
It's definitely a pay rise, isn't it? He's probably going to add a couple more bedrooms to the house.
Yeah.
Looking at, instead of, the lazy NBA 3 bathrooms, 3 bedrooms, probably 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Maybe bump it up a little bit. But, I think Parsons is a guy that could really explode this year as his role evolves in Dallas, because we saw Dwight Howard and James Harden came out and slammed him for leaving and said he's just a role player, but I think he can really excel with the Mavs.
I think he can be almost the number 1 if Dirk's having an off game this year. Bit selfish for Harden and Howard to have a crack at him like that. I think Parsons deserves more credit.
Yeah, I think he's definitely an underrated guy. I mean, we saw him hit 10 straight threes in a game last season, which shows the explosiveness. And while it's a small sample size, he's not going to do that every game.
No.
But he's a guy that can light it up on offense. He's an underrated defender at times because he's really long, got that big athletic body, and he's going to finish in transition, which is exactly how this team likes to score their points. But before we get too serious and start talking about transition offense and all this kind of stuff, we're going to move on to my favourite part of the show, the Believe the Hypothetical, which is brought to us by the guys at the Believe the Hype NBA podcast. All their info is going to be on the screen, and go check out all their social media platforms and listen to the podcast. I listened to it on the way here, on the way down the drive, gave it a listen. The Fever series is really great. Love your work, boys. But this is their prediction for the season, is that the Mavericks-Rockets turf wars are going to be awesome this year.
The Mavericks and Rockets were always a great turf war. It's sort of been, San Antonio has always been that other one that's been in Texas. They're always on top, they're always winning championships, but these two have always been going at each other. And now with Parsons going from one team to the other, that's going to be added fire.
Yeah, I remember back in the day the games between T-Mac and Yow's Rockets, and still Dirk led Mavs, and T-Mac dunking on Sean Bradley in one game, which was monstrous.
That's a classic moment.
It's one of my first memories of T-Mac, and just, those were the best games. Because like you said, these guys are really scrapping out for that second spot, because we know what San Antonio's done for the last 16 years and is probably going to do for another 16 years. Who knows how long Tim Duncan can keep going. But yeah, no, these two teams are division rivals, so they're going to face off 4 times. So we're going to get 4 awesome clashes with added spice, because we've got someone jumping ship from one side to the other.
And it's a star player as well. It's not as if it's just a role player off the bench. It's Chandler Parsons. He's a big name. I don't know what effect that's going to have on the Rockets, but for Dallas it's going to mean a lot more scoring and a lot more focus on him.
Yeah, well, going by what Dwight Howard and James Harden said, I don't know if they even really know that he's switched teams. They're not paying that much attention to him.
I don't know if they know who's on the bench. It's just number 5, number 6.
Yeah, I think the more spice is going to be coming from Parsons himself, trying to prove that Rockets team wrong, because, you know, they really used him as such just a tool in the off-season. They let him go become an unrestricted free agent just to get Chris Bosh. So they pretty much said, look, you're expendable. And now he's going to come back and say, well, how expendable am I? So
he's got a point to prove.
He's got a point to prove, chip on his shoulder, all those cliches, and I think it's going to be awesome. But we've got to quickly wrap it up there. We've been babbling on for a while. 30 seconds on the clock, buzzer beater section. What's your prediction for the 2014-15 Dallas Mavericks?
Dallas Mavericks probably finish about 5th or 6th. They'll probably get bounced in the first round if they face the Thunder or the Clippers, which they probably will. Parsons will become a great offensive threat. Dirk will still be great, as he always has been, and they'll probably be a little bit better defensively. Yeah, well, I've got them slotted in for 5th in the West, so they won't have that home court advantage, and they will be facing off against the Memphis Grizzlies in my prediction, which will be the perfect all offense, all defense, 2 completely different teams. And unfortunately, I think that will be another first round exit. So I'm with you. I think this Mavs team could come back and bite me, because they could be a top 4 team if they gel really well, but I can't see it happening in year 1 with this new roster. Not this year. Anyway, this has been the Fiasco Sports NBA season previews. I've been Matt Sampson. This has been Mark Halliday. Thanks for joining us. Check out the link in the description to Sporties at Arkabar and the Believe the Hype boys. Really thank all those guys for supporting us through this, and we'll catch you next time.